now that we've explained that nighttime and the concept of falling asleep is the concealment of the reality that Hashem is really running our lives, that Hashem is really running the world, that illuminated consciousness of Hashem Oyri V'Yishi, Hashem is our light, and that falling into that state of darkness and falling asleep into a constricted state of consciousness is the essence of exile, like we explained, and that causes us to feel the pain, the physical pain and the torment that we experience in Gullus, specifically because we've been impacted by the nations of the world, and we start to look at the world through their darkened lenses, and we experience a world where we think that there's no light, and there's no meaning, and there's no purpose. So Reb Nosson now uses this idea to explain why it is that when we fall asleep, and when a person sleeps, there is a spirit of impurity that comes down onto a person. Because this is the aspect of Gullus, this is the aspect of the darkening of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence, the concealment, and that's exactly what Tumah is. Tumah is the vacuum, the void of purity. Is that when purity is removed, in its vacuum comes Tumah, and this is encapsulated most explicitly when we speak about the Avi Avoisa Tumah, right? That the primary category of impurity, which is Tumas Meis, which comes upon a person, or rather it comes upon a person's body when the person, which is the spirit, which is the neshama, leaves, and the person becomes a chalal, a person becomes a corpse, which is also the word that means a void, a vacuum. And when there's a chalal, when there's a histalkus, when there is the ascension and the removal and the departure of spirit, so then automatically impurity fills that void. Because that's what impurity is. It's not real. It doesn't have an entity in and of itself. It's the energy that conceals the divine. And when there's a concealment of a HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in a place, so that produces impurity. And says Reb Nosson, that's exactly what's happening in the nighttime. When the sun has set, when Hashem Oyir V'Yishi, the light of a HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence is concealed, and Ki Shemesh U'Magen Hashem Elikim, that sun is set, and a person goes into exile, Chashach Hashemesh B'Tzeisa, like Yeshayahu says, a reference to exile, where the sun has set and it's dark, and a person falls asleep into a lower state of consciousness. Says Reb Nosson, that produces Tumah. And where does the Tumah go? Where does the impurity go? And the Zohar Kadosh tells us that the Tumah goes onto our hands. The Tumah is Shoyreh al Barnash, on the human being, and specifically on the Yadayim, on the hands. Why is this? Why is it that the Tumah comes specifically on our hands? It can come on our elbows, it can come on our knees, it can come on any other part of the body. Why is it coming specifically and appearing on our hands? So says Reb Nosson very deeply, because the concept of hands is the concept of a person's own strength, a person's own experience of accomplishment in this world, like the pasuk says, that chas v'shalom, for a Jew to ever say koichi va'otzim yadi asli esachai lazeh, that there could come a time in a person's life where when things are successful and a person's accomplishing things, he can make the mistake of declaring koichi va'otzim yadi, it is my own strength, va'otzim yadi, and the power of my own hands, asli esachai lazeh, have accomplished all of this incredible, whatever it is, accomplishment for myself that I see around me is just my hands, is my power, is my egotistical expression of self. And we see that it has to do with the Yadayim, because the Yadayim means that this is what we use to create. And with our hands is the primary way that we interact with the world, on the level of production, on the level of creating. And this, says Reb Nosson, this is the impurity of Laila, of Choshech, of Galus. Is this illusion that a person is alone? Is this illusion that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is concealed, is gone? And that a person sinks into a sub-level of consciousness, the concept of sleep, the concept of Shena, a constricted consciousness, where a person begins to have the exilic, the exile-oriented perspective and mindset, that there's really no meaning to anything. And that we are here to create the meaning on our own, as opposed to be guided by the objective meaning that's revealed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the Torah. And a person falls into that darkness, a person falls into that perspective, which ultimately sees nothing else than a person's own self. My strength, it's my power, it's my hands that have accomplished anything that there is that's worthy in my life. And of course, a person who experiences life in that way, when there's a challenge, there's no way to see anything deeper. And therefore that causes, says Rabbi Nachman and Reb Nosson, an inordinate amount of pain that could be avoided otherwise if a person sees the world for what it really is, which is a mask behind which the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is constantly present. And a person sinks into that state of a lack of das, of moichin de katnus, a constricted moichin, a constricted consciousness. And Mamela says, Reb Nosson, that's the impurity that comes onto a person when the person is sleeping, when it's dark, when the sun of godliness has set in a person's life, and a person sinks into gullus. Because it can be in gullus. We're all in gullus. The world is not redeemed, but you can be a little bit with geula consciousness in gullus. That's what the Baal Shem Tov and all the tzaddikim were trying to help us to do, was to live in exile, but at the same time, like Noach's Teva, the Ramchal says, the Zohar Kadosh, that a person can be in the Mabul and a person at the same time can be protected. And the Zohar, the teachings of Rabbi Shimon, the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, these teachings of Rabbi Nachman, they are the Teva. They are that boat that enables a person to be in exile and at the same time living with the consciousness of Geula. But imagine if a person is in Gullus and then they have a Gullus mindset. That's a personal Gullus. That's a personal exile. And that impurity is going to go on the Adayim, because that's emblematic of what it means to be a person who lives as if there's no God. It's my own strength and the power of my own hands. And that's the aspect of the impurity that comes dafka and reveals itself on a person's yadayim. So Reb Nosson explains further that in a very deep way, the yadayim, the hands of a person, are connected to Shamayim, to the heavens. Because the yadayim, the two hands respectively represent, the right hand is chesed, the left hand is gevura. And chesed is the concept of water, and gevura is the concept of fire. So water always unites, and chesed is kindness, it connects people, and fire always splits apart, and it takes one entity and it burns it into billions of ashes. And that's the energy of gevura that seeks to separate severity, harshness. And we know that Shamayim is a conjugation. That word, Shamayim, that means heaven, is a connection of two words, of Eish and Mayim. Shamayim, Eish, that's the Shin, and Mem Yud Mem. Shamayim is Eish and Mayim. And that's what the heavens are. And so the heavens have very much to do with a person's hands, because the heavens contain the mazalos. And we know that the truth is Ein Mazal Yisrael, that Klal Yisrael are under direct hashgacha from Hashem. But a person could fall under the mistaken notion when a person's in gullus and in a constricted way of thinking and a constricted way of living in this world, a person can fall under the mistaken notion that in fact all there is nature. All there is Shamayim. All there is just the Adayim, just the hands. And a person can fall into that way of believing that really there's nothing else other than Teva. Other than Teva, other than nature, other than the world as we experience it, as we see it. And Reb Nosson says this is really what the hands, each of which is called Yad, which is Yud Dalet, which is 14, and if you put them together, it's 28. And that spells Koyach. That a person thinks, oh, this is my Koychi va'oitzem Yadi. These are my hands. That each of the hands have 14, aside from being gematria 14, because Yud Dalet is 14, but each of the hands have 14 different ligaments, if you count them. All the fingers, and split into all the parts that they split into is 14, and when you put them together, it's 28. And 28 are the letters with which HaKadosh Baruch Hu created heaven and earth, the 22 letters of the Aleph Beis and the 7 letters that are doubled. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with 28. And it means a person falls for the illusion of a natural world. A person falls into the illusion of Teva. A person falls into the illusion of Shamayim, Eish, and Mayim, Chesed, Gvura. A person thinks, this is what it is. There's nothing else beyond the mask. That's exile. And when a person falls asleep with their hands in the nighttime, in the darkness, when the sun of godliness has set, this causes the impurity that manifests on a person's hands when a person thinks that really all there is in life is his own experience, and that's gullus, and that's the pain that we experience.
אני הבן ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני